Okay. Sorry for the delay. I have to mute
There is a
this.
delay.
Yes. Okay, here we go. So we're live streaming, we're in person, we're hybrid, we have figured it out. Hi. There's people in front of me while I'm talking. That hasn't happened in a while. I'm probably out of practice, so we'll just go with it. So we're basically translating what we've been doing on Zoom to in person, so it's gonna be like half an hour at most. Like we're gonna keep it short. We're not doing the full hour thing anytime soon. We're not there yet. Which I don't think anybody's gonna complain about. Let's be honest. You'd rather talk to each other and see each other. So we're still in our series, Revolutionary Love. If you've missed all of them, that's okay. The book is by Valerie Kaur, and she shares a lot of her story of learning to love first. We began with loving those who are strangers, then loving those who are opponents. She doesn't use the word enemy, she uses opponents intentionally. That an enemy is someone who is always going to be against you, but an opponent you can find some sort of way of connecting. And then now we're on loving ourselves. Last week was breathe. So first you have to take time to breathe as we care for ourselves. And today we're moving on to push. I have a song for us to get going, hopefully.
Should you try to tell yourself I'm gonna leave you? If the fear you carry's inclined to believe you, when the ghosts of all the stories upend and deceive you, hold on. When the miles are much too hard and roads are too long, if my face in your mind is an unfinished song, and you're sure that the right is all headed for wrong, hold on. Hold on. Won't you write the fear a lullaby? Remind her it's okay to cry. Find me in the folds of your desire. Tell the worries in your way to try again another day. Shut up and love me till they all expire. 'Cause I'm not done with you yet, and this weight around my neck is nothing but a make-believe goodbye. So write the fear a lullaby. Should the shadows in your memory undo you? If the edges of the truth blur and elude you, and the corners of the future try and tear a hole right through you, hold on. Hold on. Won't you write the fear a lullaby? Remind her it's okay to cry. Find me in the folds of your desire. Tell the worries in your way to try again another day. Shut up and love me till they all retire. 'Cause I'm not done with you yet, and this weight around my neck is nothing but a make-believe goodbye. So write the fear a lullaby. You tell her a story, I'll sing her a tune, as if words could heal the wounds. I tell her a story, you sing her a tune, as if words could heal the wounds, as if words could heal the wounds. and we'll write the fear a lullaby. Reminder it's okay to cry. Find me in the folds of your desire. Tell the worries in your way to try again another day. Shut up and love me till they all get tired. 'Cause I'm not done with you yet, and this weight around my neck is nothing but a make-believe goodbye. So write the fear a lullaby.
Okay, I hope this is working. It's a good way to know that it's working. There we go. Perfect. Okay. So our reading today is from the Gospel according to Mark, chapter 7. Jesus left that place and went into the region of Tyre. He didn't want anyone to know that he had entered a house, but he couldn't hide. In fact, a woman whose young daughter was possessed by an unclean spirit had heard about him right away. She came and fell at his feet. The woman was Greek, Syrophoenician by birth. She begged Jesus to throw the demon out of her daughter. He responded, "The children have to be fed first. It isn't right to take the children's bread and toss it to the dogs." But she answered, "Lord, even the dogs under the table eat the children's crumbs." "Good answer," he said. "Go on home. The demon has already left your daughter." When she returned to her house, she found the child lying on a bed and the demon gone. Okay. So these words from Jesus are ones that are interesting when we talk about them. Basically, it sounds like he's calling the woman a dog, which is not something kind. But some things get lost in translation in both language and culture. Jesus speaks in parables and metaphors all the time. And so when he mentions the children have to be fed first, and it isn't right to take the children's food or bread and toss it to the dogs, the children would have been understood, and we can understand it as response, in response, to mean the children of God. So God's people, the Jews, the promised chosen people. And the dogs would have been understood as a symbol of outsiders, so those outside of that chosen group. So basically what Jesus is saying here is, my ministry is to these people, and the rest comes later. So it's harsh in a sense that, like, I'm sorry, you're not one of my people. I can't help you, is kind of what he's saying. But he was saying it in a way that that's not what I'm here to do. That's not my calling. That's not my job. But then she responds in a way that pushes past his understanding of who he is and what his calling is to be, so that something can be transcended. That barrier between them becomes less important. And he even says, that's a good answer. Like, thank you for reminding me that I don't need to box my own ministry in and my own understandings. The cultures that divide us don't have to define who we are. So in that moment, it isn't Jesus who's doing the pushing. It's the Syrophoenician woman who causes Jesus to think. So she's caring for herself, advocating for herself in that moment, and caring for her family, because it's her daughter who she's trying to take care of. And anyone who's a parent knows you'll go to pretty good lengths to keep your kids safe. Things that you wouldn't otherwise probably do. And this cultural clash would have been a big enough deal that if people saw it, they'd have been like, oh, that is not okay. But she didn't care. She knew that she was caring for herself in this way. So if you didn't read the chapter in the book, that's fine. We're basing this on her work, Valerie Kaur, because it aligns so clearly with who we are, I think, as people of justice, inclusion, and family. And her framework is very helpful for us. I'm not going to retell her story. You should go read it if you want to hear that. She's telling our own stories is something that is special, and I think having her do that is important. But she does use in this section of loving ourselves or loving yourself, which we can use individually and collectively, I think. She uses the metaphor of birthing. So breathe, push, and transition. Things which you have to do when giving birth. But she writes that in using this metaphor, only a subset of women give birth this way, or give birth at all. But the ability to create and nurture is a human right, not a biological one. I use birthing labor as a metaphor for any person in the midst of creative endeavors. If the metaphor of war offers wisdom on how to face injustice and fight the good fight, then perhaps the metaphor of birth can offer us all wisdom about the courage needed to create something new. So we did breathe last week, that as we experienced the trauma and grief of the earlier sections, and found rage that can be channeled into the energy to fight injustice. There are moments, and she finds this in her own story, that you have to stop just pouring yourself out, because you will run dry. That she was sacrificing her own health in ways that were going to keep her from being able to do the work that she knew she was called to do. And so she, after being encouraged by others, found the space to breathe. And she went on her honeymoon that she had put off for far too long. Even though there was always going to be something that would need her, there was always going to be more work to do, she had to take care of herself and breathe and find that space. And she invited us to consider that it's not just an individual thing, it's a communal thing, that her community needed that too, and found that in the work that she was doing. This week we move on to push. This I have a slide for. One of the things that she wrote was, when I was finally ready to love myself, I had to learn to breathe and push through my grief, rage, and trauma. On the other side, I found what seemed utterly impossible before: healing, forgiveness, and even reconciliation. The things that we're trying to do as Sacred Place of Justice, Inclusion, and Family involve healing. That's going to be necessary to get to the other side of things. But to even get to that place, pushing through the work we've done in ourselves is still necessary. The things that we've experienced don't just go away. We learn to deal with them. We learn to see others in the way that we need to, as not people who are just different from us, but as people who are one of us, and we just have to find a place of healing for the ways that we are different. And maybe we can find a way to reconcile and get back to being the same. And through her story, she does a really interesting, she has a very interesting experience, I think, with one of her family members who was a source of the trauma in her life. And finds a way to push through, realizing that the forgiveness that was being asked of her was only something for herself. That's just letting go of that rage. The healing, the reconciling, that is work that they could do together. She had to first do that work of, the forgiveness wasn't something that she could give him. She couldn't absolve him of the thing he had done. But maybe they could find a way to create something new, some way of being that might work. Now, as the victim of what she experienced, that was on her terms. She didn't have to, she could say that we're not going to do anything new, but I can release myself from dealing with this hate, this pain. She's able to do something that I think is really hard. When we've experienced some sort of trauma or hate or whatever against us, that rage that we have to channel into creating change doesn't always let go of that pain that we've experienced. That is work that takes, for her, it took 20 years to really get to that place, I think. It can take decades. It can take a long time to get to that place. But even in those moments when it is safe to do so, when you are ready to be able to push through that to the other side, that's the reason you should go read this chapter if you haven't, is hearing that part of her story. The example that she gives is, it's beautiful in her story. That's something that we have yet to do as a nation, I think. Just watching the news is a way to see that reconciliation is not close yet. She wrote about that. She writes, America needs to reconcile with itself and do the work of apology. To say to indigenous black and brown people, we take full ownership of what we did. To say, we owe you everything. To say, we see how harm runs through generations. To say, we own this legacy and will not harm you again. To promise the non-repetition of harm would require nothing less than transitioning the nation as a whole, reckoning with the past, reconciling with ourselves, restructuring our institutions, and letting those who have been most harmed be the ones to lead us through the transition. So to push as a practice of revolutionary love is a choice to engage our grief, rage, and trauma in order to create new possibilities in ourselves and then maybe also others. It requires us to discern the right times to breathe and rest, and the right times to push into difficult feelings, difficult emotions and thoughts. Even if they're painful. We have to push through them, but only when we're ready to do so. If you do that too soon, it's just going to create more trauma. Pushing is the second practice of loving ourselves, and it really does have to accompany the practice of breathing. Whereas some of the other cycles that we've gone through in revolutionary love have been kind of a forward trajectory. I think this is one that goes back and forth. I think breathing and pushing happens as in the birthing metaphor. You don't just breathe once and push once and it's over. It's this thing that happens again and again. So to birth a new thing in this country, in this world, in our own lives, it's going to take doing those over and over and over again. My mom always tells me the story of when I was born, it was like 16 hours of labor that started at like 1 in the morning. So she doesn't let me forget that, even now that I'm 37. Because my sister was 30 minutes and done. She was quick, easy, second one, done. Now, I was and then I like stopped breathing and all it was yeah. So it was a long time of that for her, and many women have experienced that. But giving birth to a new thing is difficult work. Like when giving birth, breathing is something that pushing is also very much like that. It's best practiced with other people in community who can help us through that process of healing. There's a reason you don't usually give birth by yourself. There's someone there to coach. Even in the times of COVID, there still have people around you. It's less people maybe. It's not the whole family like we'd like, but there's someone there to help you remember to breathe and to push. Because in those painful moments, it's hard to remember those things. But when we breathe and push together, when we have found the same thing to have rage channeled into fighting for justice, then we can honor the ways that we are dependent upon one another and also support one another. Now, she writes all these things in her book not in a religious sense. I mean, she writes from her own religious perspective and her own experience as a sick woman. But she's not trying to prescribe religion to anyone. It's just, this is how we love one another. That lines pretty much up with who Jesus is, though, even in this story, of being the recipient of some of the pushing, maybe, different than what we usually see from him. But he is reminded of the ways we are interconnected and depend upon one another, even if we are separated as different by the world around us. So forgiveness and reconciliation, as I mentioned, they're distinct things that are important to separate. And pushing through, I almost see the forgiveness side of things. The forgiving is kind of on the breathe side of things, of the caring for ourselves. And then reconciliation is the pushing part. Because forgiveness doesn't require the participation of the other person, the person who has harmed us. It's something that we can do for ourselves. That's not the way we talk about forgiveness very often in our culture, I don't think. So if we look at the reconciliation part as the pushing, it rests on accountability of the one who has harmed us and us, of making sure that they accept responsibility for the things they have done. That's the thing that doesn't happen, I don't think, very often in social discourse. There's a lot of things we see, and the remorse and acceptance, people don't show that very often. They may have that, but it's not something we're comfortable showing publicly, accepting the things we've done wrong. But that's the only way reconciliation is going to happen. To create something new, we have to take responsibility for the things that have happened. That's what that quote from her, I think, really says, is to create something new, we have to really deal with and let go of the past and push past it. So as people who fight for justice, inclusion, and family in our world, we can do the forgiving, but we can't make reconciliation happen by ourselves. So that goes back to the work of those who oppose us and that cycle of taking our rage and fighting for it and then creating something different. That has to happen. There's a reason it's a wheel and a circle, the way she envisions this. You don't just go through one, then the next one, the next one, and then you're done. They all happen all the time, and we have to work through them and make them part of how we love others. It's okay to call someone out on their junk for the ways they've hurt you, and that can still be loving. You have to be kind about it, but you still can do that because it's the only way this keeps moving forward. Yeah, I have a song now. That's what I'm doing. Sorry. I'm used to having way more notes spread out because I get my desk in there, and I'm like, wait, where is everything? It's all here. This next song, I think, is a good way of reflecting on this particular practice of revolutionary love.
This is my side of the story, and I'm sticking to this tune. It may not seem to you like fact, but for me it is the truth. I wrestled long and hard with all the pieces and the parts. I wound up with this bleeding broken heart. And I wish that I had known this from the start. Did you ever really give a damn? Do you even care? Was there curiosity for all the burdens that I bear? Did you ever stop to wonder? Does it even cross your mind that I have done the best I could 1,000 times? This is my part in the damage. This I'm owning on my shame. The sticks and stones that broke my bones had nothing on the names. 'Cause I've been called all kinds of things from the pulpit and my king, till somehow I believed I'd never win. In this endless strife and struggle with my sin, did they ever really give a damn? Did they even care? Too busy trying to save my soul with all their thoughts and prayers. Did they ever stop to notice? Did they walk on by and leave me lying in that ditch 1,000 times? Ooh. So I'm looking in the mirror. What's this face I see? I hardly recognize myself, this man I wanna be. I'm tired of the masquerade and my part in the game. Surely there must be a better way. So I'm learning to be naked and unafraid. Oh, I'm trying not to give a damn, give in to the despair. I'm starting to protect my heart and treat it with some care. Oh, why'd I ever listen to these broken, hateful lies when love was whispered in my ear 1,000 times?
Sorry, you're seeing me from the side. Everybody on the live stream, the camera didn't want to work over here. Sorry, didn't explain that earlier. So we'll be back here for hybrid worship, and there, and here, and everywhere. Our series is not over yet. From here, we go on to, hold on, don't let me get them mixed up. Transition, that's right. So once you start creating a new thing, what do you do after that? Good question. We'll get to that next week. And then the very last chapter of this book is joy, which times perfectly with Advent coming up. So we're just going to push all that down the road into Advent and maybe change the order of things for Advent this year. Who knows? But finding the joy, that's the direction all of this goes. So we'll spend the whole season doing that, which sounds good. Yeah. Don't have any other announcements. So for our live stream folks, thank you for joining us, whether or not it's when we're live or some other time down the road. We'll work out the camera and technical things so it's a little better next week. But we're going to keep doing this hybrid thing as long as we need to. There are plenty who would like to be here and can't yet. So we wanted to create ways for us to be together. That's why we do the Zoom fellowship time at 10:30 and then after 2. So it's kind of before and after this until about noon. So if you would like to join us that way, please do. Either way. As always, the reason we do this work of justice, inclusion, and family is to create sacred places wherever we go. So wherever you are, if it's here at our mission center or in your own home, this is your sacred place. And there's not a button.